I have the pleasure of introducing Professor Eli Noam, who's Emeritus from the Business School, Professor of Finance and Economics, and well-known, the Director of the Columbia Institute of Teleinformation, and author of many publications and books, including in 2021, he just recently won the Outstanding Academic Book Award from the Association of College and Research Libraries on Cloud TV, on the content impact and regulation of streaming video. But in addition to his expertise in media, he's taken a deep dive and interest into the medical insurance program at Columbia. He began working on this when he was on the Senate. We're happy that he's now on our steering committee and has authored two reports on the retirement medical insurance system, which he's going to talk to us about today. I also want to introduce Frank Wolf, whom I'm not seeing on my screen, but I may not. Frank, are you there? I don't know what's the problem. Well, I was hoping that Frank was supposed to be here. I just was in email with him. He's Dean Emeritus of the School for Professional Studies, made huge contributions over the years to Columbia's academic training programs, and helped shepherd many EPIC members through the transition last year when Columbia just dropped the old insurance program and switched to VIA with little notice and not much assistance. And Frank really helped get people through that. And he's supposed to be minding the chat, but I will do that until he gets on. Maybe Abdallah, you can send him an email. So with that, I'd like to turn this over to you, Eli, and thank you.
Well, thank you, Jean, for organizing it.
Before, we're going to, Abdallah is going to mute everyone. And if you have a question or for now, we're going to ask you to please put the question into the chat, and we will monitor the chat after. For now, I will look at, and then Frank will look at the chat. And if something seems appropriate to just interrupt, we're just going to unceremoniously interrupt Eli and ask your question. And then after the presentation, we'll open it up. But there's just too many people to really monitor hands waving and things like that. So you'll be muted, and please put your questions into the chat. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jean and Frank, wherever you are, because you guys have kind of kept this together and kept the organization going, EPIC. And I'm a relative latecomer, but I do appreciate the infrastructure that's been created, including with Abdallah in support. So thank you very much. And I'm certainly glad to see many faces that have corresponded with me already. The list of people involved here is kind of it's a bit like a reading list. There are all these kind of prominent people who've written on kind of important subjects. We bring to the table, to the Columbia table, extraordinary experience and contribution to the institution, often lifelong contribution to the institution. What we think is fair to us. Treatment is not only fair to us, but also to the institution itself, to its own incentives. The incentives, namely, to create new vacancies by making it easier for people, smoother for people to move on from full-time active to part-time to retirees, thereby establishing new forms, new ways for younger people, fresh blood, to come in. It's also from the university, from a purely financial standpoint, it's cheaper to have younger people than to keep older people. So even if it's own financial narrow self-interest, never mind the academic interest, it would be in the university's interest to have a better system. So My own involvement here came through chairing two Senate committees, the Benefits Committee, Subcommittee, and the Budget Committee. When I was kind of nearing retirement, and the new plan came to us by the university about 1.5 years or so ago, and I started to look into it, and I started to raise questions, and the questions were mostly not answered. I was being stalled, and then kind of the plan was being announced. It was clear that they did not really want to engage with the Senate and its committees on this matter, but basically just brief us, this is what we're going to do, take it or leave it, basically. And so since I had already started thinking about it, I kind of then, in retirement, whatever that means now, started to write a report that was kind of circulated and eventually kind of got people thinking about it. One thing that I discovered is I did not kind of get into this knowing very much about the subject, but I did discover that nobody else knew much about the subject either. And I'm not just talking about us, the retiree community, but the administration itself is fragmented and divided. And nobody had the full picture. That there were benefits people, there were and HR people, and there were the financial people who were managing the finances of the trust fund. I will talk about this in a moment. And then there were the academic people of the provost's office who should have been more on top of this, but they kind of didn't really know very much about it either. So the consequence of this process was that I think that now everybody understands the system better, including the law library, the administration itself, that we instituted a dialogue of some form, a bit informal, some of it formal, some of it informal, but there's better understanding and a willingness to make this into a better system. So I don't see this right now as an antagonistic process. At this point, it might become one, but I don't think it is right now. I think the university is trying reluctantly, slowly to get a better system, because our arguments and facts and figures have actually been somewhat softening the relative opposition that one would expect from a large institution that essentially does things a certain way and doesn't want to be bothered by us mere retirees. So let me then kind of give you a little bit of an overview of the system as it was, as it is, and as it will be, and as it should be. All right. So let me go into a share screen mode. Let me find my PowerPoint. Let me do this here. Where's this here? Is it? It's right down here. Okay, I will start by excusing the relative amateurish form of these PowerPoints. I literally got back yesterday morning from an international conference in Morocco and in Fez and in Casablanca. And so I didn't really have much time to prepare it. Morocco was not the greatest place to be in the last several days for a former member of the Israeli Air Force. But it turned out to be actually more peaceful, I think, than College Walk is right now. So it was not so bad. Okay. Part of the problem is the cliff that awaits people as active faculty as they retire. If you look over to the left, you see approximately, these are numbers that are about 2 years old now, approximately the medical benefits, medical payments out of pocket that people have to contribute. And if you look as you move to the right, you see kind of how much they should expect, again, 2 years ago, expect to pay actually, and then there's the green, and on top of it is the blue, which is the tax consequence, because you have to pay from after-tax income. So as you can see, there's a very significant number from 2,700 on the left to 15,000 and more, and that's just for an individual, and it kind of almost doubles for a couple. And so the other bars are for alternative Medicare with Medigap, Medicare Advantage, alternative type arrangements. This is a fairly significant difference from active to passive from the last year of teaching to the first year of retirement. And it is discouraged, once people understand it, it is a factor to discourage people from retiring. And it's counterproductive for the university to have such a large gap, in my view, because on the one hand, it tries to get people to retire by buyout plans and all kinds of other arrangements, including staying in the apartments, etc. But at the same time, making kind of creating such a large gap for retirement. This has not always been the case. If you look here, this is the historic trend in adjusted for inflation over time. When you go back to 1993, which is a while ago, but okay, one generation ago, the university basically paid everything. Kind of, that is a regular arrangement, the same arrangement as active faculty had. And then over time, step by step, this was reduced. And to some extent, we were in the situation like the proverbial frog in the pot of water that is being heated. It's kind of, each step down was kind of frustrating, but not the end of the world. And so it just kind of happened. And so we basically ended up in the most recent change that was announced last year for this current year, 23, we basically ended up to almost a token. And in fact, a token of $16 or $18.33 per officer per month, which gets you practically not much more than toothpaste. And it's actually even worse because it covered all this amount that was kind of for which this year's plan is, which is $220 per officer and $110 per spouse. Is only for those retirees who are covered already by Columbia, who are already on a Columbia plan. Everybody else, and that's almost everybody, almost 80% of retirees had already gone off the Columbia plans because the Columbia plans were so expensive for reasons we can discuss, but we don't have to. And so in consequence, it was a trivial amount that was given to a trivial number of people. And you can see here on kind of starting from the left, how much the university actually could, in actual dollar terms, contributed in around 2000 or so, 1993, it was over 6 million, and then it kept going down. And the latest number is actually the number 0.31 for 2023, the bottom number there. And so you can see how much the university kind of went down from 6 million to less than 500,000 over time. At the time when medical expenses for everybody kept going through the roof. Now, the two numbers that you see, the higher numbers, the 2 million and the 3 million over there, that is under the new plan, and I will get to that shortly. So now, as I mentioned, if a plan succeeds in accelerating retirement by 1 year on average, and making a certain assumption on the dollar amount, then kind of accelerating by people's retirement by 1 year on average saves the university 15 million right there. If you just say, oh, it accelerates only by 1 month, 1 month only on average, it would still be more than 1 million savings per year, and one could hire younger people. Okay, now comes the new plan. After us raising the issue, after us making some noise, going kind of after the Senate getting slightly involved in this, EPIC involved in it by writing letters, and so on, the university kind of and I had personally, I had many conversations with the executive vice president of the university, Jerry Rosberg, who handled this very well, I must say. We kind of got this up from the $220 and $110 to $900 plus $450. So that's more than a quadrupling. That looks like a good number. So in dollar terms, for a couple, it's more than $1,000 extra per year, year in, year out. So it just kind of adds up. That's the good news. But even better, actually, and more expensive for the university, we have to kind of recognize this, is that the eligibility has been increased, has been also extended to everybody who had been on the plan, who had gone off the plan in less than 5 years ago. In other words, if you had gone off the Columbia plan 4 years ago, you could still come back now and receive your $1,000 or whatever it is now, which was not the old plan. Nobody who was on the who had gone off the plan could come back. So that is certainly steps in the right direction. Okay, what is that? Okay, let's ignore this. Okay, so this kind of gets to the cost aspects. I see what I'm saying. So the numbers, the contributions per officer that I showed you coming down are now coming up again, have come up again to a number that is roughly comparable to 2022. Not quite comparable if you take into account that these have been inflationary years, etc., but roughly the same ballpark. And in terms of financial kind of burden to the university of some sort, it moved from the less than $500,000, 0.31, to 2 million estimated, as I estimated, 2 million this in 24 to 3 million going forward over time. Now, so the bad news still is that the look back is only for 5 years, and so retirees who have gone off the very pricey Columbia plans more than 5 years ago are still excluded. And that is a major issue of contention, and that's still open. The university has not said no, they just basically said, let's see what the numbers will show. So this is an open question, but the open question should be pursued with vigor. The catastrophic drug support program has been abolished. That's not as bad as it sounds, because there has been a federal law in the meantime passed that basically caps the out-of-pocket medical expenses for individuals. But this is a subject matter where I personally would like to hear everybody like to educate each other here on the actuality of how this is working out, because this is a very complex arrangement, and each drug program is somewhat different. And the other problem that exists is that VIA or VIA, however they pronounce it, keeps an exclusivity over the university's contribution. In other words, if you want to get that $1,000, that $900 plus spousal, if you want to get that money, you have to go through VIA. There's no other choice, and it has all kinds of problems with that arrangement that I will discuss very shortly. Jean, am I running too slow? Okay, fine. All right. So now let's kind of do some comparisons. How good is the number that Columbia is giving us now, as opposed to what is affordable, but let's compare it. So the proposed number that Columbia has now instituted is $900. In comparison, or $1,300 if we include the spouse. In comparison, the support staff, which is the second employee category at Columbia, officers are about 83%, and the rest is support staff. Support staff is unionized and has negotiated a deal per household, not just individual, per household of lifetime approximately worth $3,960. And you see this is a huge difference. Now one could argue, okay, they negotiated good retirement benefits in return for lower salary while they were active, and that's possible, but still this is an extraordinarily wide gap. In comparison with peers, Colombia this year doing truly pathetically, $220, and look at the comparable numbers at most other institutions. Now, it's true that Penn is also fairly low down there, but even NYU downtown here is kind of significantly better. Harvard and Princeton are vastly better than Columbia is. And I think those numbers, to some extent, almost shamed the university in doing better for us. Once we could show those numbers. If you compare it with our New York neighbors, NYU has much better deal, and CUNY has a fabulous deal. I mean, this is kind of something like you would say, kind of work at Columbia, retire at CUNY. Yeah, I've shown that already. Yes. Now, one important thing to understand is where the money comes from. It does not come from the university budget. It does not come from the fringe pool. And those are important observations, because it means this kind of our support for our retirement money does not compete with other benefits to faculty and officers. It's not either we kind of fund young couples with children or we fund old timers on retirement. No, it comes from a dedicated trust fund, the Columbia University Retirement Medical and Life Insurance Trust Fund, which was something that kind of nobody knew about. I'm not suggesting that it was hidden, it just wasn't talked about. I was chairing the benefits committee of the University Senate. We should have known something about this, the existence of this trust fund, but when I asked in that committee, has anybody heard of the Kermel Trust Fund, there was not a single hand being rising. Kermel Trust Fund is legally independent from the university, although it's trustee and it files separately with the IRS and with the state. Its officers, its trustees are basically university officers. It's chaired by the executive vice president of finance, Anne Sullivan, who's a very competent woman, I will say that. But, you know, she has lots of other things to do, including running IT and other stuff for the university. So I'm just not sure exactly how much attention this trust fund gets. It gets administered practically financially by State Street investment advisors, who kind of for their efforts get about roughly $1.1 million, $1.2 million per year for the investment management. That compares with, just remember the number that we get this year, 0.31 for all the offices of the university is the contribution that we get from the university, and State Street get 3 times as much. And you just wonder, because it's in some ways it's a different issue, and State Street's fees by Wall Street standards are reasonable. It's not exploitative, but the arrangement itself seems kind of what if you think that this is some complex investment management, you are giving them too much credit. They're basically buying their State Street, their own fund family, in a totally kind of easy way. Some bonds and some international bonds and some domestic stock and some domestic kind of growth stock and some domestic value. It's just basically kind of State Street funds 7, 8, 10, whatever statistics funds. You and I could do this in 10 minutes.
Eli, now Alice Kessler Harris wants to know, when does the 5-year period begin? And did we ever figure out how many people are still around who retired more than 5 years ago? I know I did, but do you have an idea?
Who retired what?
How many people, even under the new 5-year plan, would still not be getting the benefit?
Yeah, my calculation, and the university is not giving numbers. My calculation is that there potentially 3,000 new people, 3,000 people are still outside, and could be expected to come in. I will get to that Alice, I will get to that in just a minute if you let me. So the trust fund assets are quite high there now. 260 million 2 years ago. Now the stock market has gone up and down. I don't have the latest numbers because the university files only a year after the fact. So let's say 250 million roughly. And those 250 million, one should also add, are have to support both the officers, 83% of employees and retirees, and the rest are the support staff, and they have also be supported. The university reports them in a commingled way, which makes it really difficult for us to figure out how much of us is kind of our money and how much of it is the support staff money. And the university has been really cagey in trying to disentangle this. And my guess is that they don't want to have the unions in particular have access to the information, that because if they give it to us, they will by definition have to give it to them too, because it's only a subtraction that is required. Okay, so under the system that we still have this year, the university's contribution is to us is only about 1.4% of total annual of total annual gain, and that the assets of assets itself is 0.12%, not 12%, 0.12%, whereas the trust fund itself averages a gain of 8.34% over the last 12 years. So we're kind of getting a trivial amount of the return of the fund. And the question is, what is this fund for? What is this trust fund for? It is supposed to support retirees, but it doesn't support retirees because we're getting only a very small share of the actual gain of those assets. And okay, so let me, oops, what happened here? Okay, so what if we kind of roughly do a back of the envelope type calculation, the average investment gain for the last 13 years was more than 8%. But these were good years, so let's kind of say Columbia pays roughly 4.5% on its endowments on average. That's already a much more conservative number, and that would be 11.7 million on the assets. And if we kind of figure out kind of generously subtract the expenses, we get almost $10 million that could be spent. Now, how does this $10 million get spent? If we figure that officers should get 83%, roughly 82% on an employee basis of the assets, then we should basically get about $8 million would be available year in, year out to support us without dipping into capital. If we say not 82%, but only 50-50 for being very generous to the support staff, we should get almost 5 million. But in fact, the university spent only this year 0.31 million by my calculation. And even under the new plan, we'll spend only 2 million, rising to 3 million. So there's plenty more money by my calculations, even if you take into account all kinds of contingencies that you have to do in order to be prudent. Okay, now let me kind of get to the eligibility. In my view, there is no principled way to justify treating retirees who are older and have been out of the system for more than 5 years worse than younger retirees. And I personally, if it comes to that, which I don't think it will, would be willing to take a lower number for everybody as long as it's an equal number for everybody. I think that's just fair. Now, the problem with the eligibility for all is the cost, and that gets to Alice's question. So if you have about 3,000 additional individuals, and not everybody will come in, and let's be realistic, some people are happy with their plan, some people are retired in Florida and we can't find them, whatever it is. But let's say 3,000 people would come back in. This would add to about $2.7 million extra a year. But kind of like, I think, based on the assets, either we can afford it, or we would have to, everybody would take less than 900. I don't think that would be necessary by my calculation, but I do think that I don't believe that's because people who have been earlier doing exactly what we're supposed to do now, which is kind of go out into the private sector market and find a retirement plan, and a privately offered retirement plan rather than the Columbia managed plans. It's kind of exactly what we're supposed to do now, and they've done it 6 years ago, why they should be excluded. I don't see any good argument except that we can't afford it, and I don't think that's true either. Okay, now one more point is the exclusivity of VIA. VIA is the largest such exchange, medical exchange in the country. I have so many problems with this that I don't even know where to start, frankly. But the worst problem that I see is that VIA is a subsidiary of Columbia's consulting company, WTW, which are the people who kind of own what used to be the Sears Tower in Chicago. So they're a large insurance HR type organization, possibly the largest in the world. They consult Columbia, and now Columbia is in a way giving VIA exclusivity, the subsidiary of the consultancy, an exclusive arrangement. I just think this is even everybody has been honorable. I totally accept that. But going forward, it's just a prescription for problems. Suppose problems emerge. Who's going to investigate them? Who's going to recommend solutions to them? Who's going to manage the transition to an alternative provider? I think that the exclusivity is not good for Columbia, is certainly not good for retirees, and is not good for it's just not good for anybody. What is important to understand is that even though the university presents this as, this is great for you guys, retirees, and I felt embarrassing that the provost, after all the documentation that we provided them with, the provost still goes to the arts and science faculty and makes statements and writes emails that says that I'm practically quoting, 99% of retirees will be better off than before, when that is absolutely incorrect, because all of the plans that VIA offers already have been available for years and years and years to all of us. There's nothing new, and there's not a penny price difference. The only thing that VIA does is to be some kind of advisor on which plans people should take. That advice, in turn, is available for free on numerous websites that you can go outside. Now, it is true that VIA offers some kind of personal consultation, so you can talk to somebody for half an hour and so on. But if you kind of figure out what the added value of VIA is it's kind of relatively trivial. And I don't know what your experience has been. I know that kind of on websites of Yelp type websites, a lot of people complaining about VIA, but they were probably complaining about others too. But the point is, there's no choice for people. If you want to get your contribution, you have to go through VIA. If you have an insurance already, as I have, that you're perfectly happy with, but VIA, if you want to have it, if you want to get it through VIA, VIA will not do this. Why not? Because then they will not get the commission. So you have to actually kind of drop out of your existing insurance with which you're totally happy and take another one in order, because VIA will not offer you the insurance that you already have, even though they offer it to everybody else. So VIA's business plan is based on commissions. The commissions can be quite substantial. They're capped by federal law or some form of regulation, but they're still quite substantial. For a typical plan, there will be between roughly $700 and $1,100 right now. If for the first time when they sign you up, and then the renewal, which for most people is a totally automatic type thing. For the renewal, they get also $500, $600 or so each year. This is a very sweet deal for VIA. By my calculations, if you think in terms of net present value, Columbia has kind of given to for the class of 23, the cohort of 23, the cohort of 24, and future cohorts. Columbia has given to VIA a net present value of almost $30 million to that company on an exclusive basis, and gotten exactly nothing in return, which kind of blows my mind, which is why would we not get something back for this benefit, or our institution, Columbia, should get something back. And there are some legal restrictions, I know, but there are other ways in which Columbia could benefit from such a kind of extraordinarily large benefit that we convey to a private company with very little in return. Okay, I'm getting to the end. The changes that we would like to see would be a full inclusion of all retirees. All retirees that are eligible. Okay, if you have retired after 2 years as a Columbia employee, that's a different story. The overall funding from the trust fund, based on the ability of the trust fund to support, kind of the trust fund would be, in effect, be like an endowment fund. It would have a certain payout rate. That payout rate could be used, averaged out, a bit smoothed out over time, could be used in order to pay the retiree insurance. We would not have to go through these discussions every year. Plus transparency, very important. And the trust fund, if a trust fund is unable to maintain even the $900 contribution level, which is not high, as I showed, then we would possibly have to accept a lower per person contribution, as long as we are covering everybody equally. I have very little to say about the catastrophic prescription drug coverage. Maybe some other people can jump in. And so let me just skip this here and kind of get to the point of the process, which is, how do we move from here to there? At this point, I find some open minds at Law Library, but I have to say it's some. They clearly are, they themselves are divided at the administration level over whether, how open they should be and how generous they should be, and if it's our business at all, as opposed to them just saying, this is it, take it or leave it. So we have different schools of thought to deal with over at the administration. But let's assume for a moment that they will listen to us. What is it that we would like to tell them? How loud is it that we would like our voice to carry? And what else should we do in order to get a benefit that I think we earned, that is fair in comparison to our peers, that makes sense for the institution itself as it seeks its own academic renewal. And so I think this whole, and that is affordable. So I think we are basically able to structure in this kind of next round, which will take place presumably over the next month and next year, we're able to structure a situation that could be a win-win for all. So thank you, and I hope I have not overstayed my welcome here.
Can you unshare your screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you wish to ask, well, first of all, thank you very much. That was very comprehensive and well delivered, and even though I've seen it before, it's still shocking. In order to have some kind of order here, can you please raise your hand, and we'll call on you in order, and try to keep your comments relatively confined so that we can proceed. Bob Pollock, I think you were first.
Tapped on mute. Thank you. Eli, that was really great. Let me be the first to speak and the first one to offer that if I can help in any way, I'd like to. I think what you're doing is fair and clear and should fix a really unfortunate situation. I retired this last June. I found VIA hopeless. I was told I had to speak to supervisors, not to the people you get on the phone, if I had any kind of a question beyond what could be read out of a one-page summary by the person I was talking to. And I did not sign up with VIA. I just went to AARP, joined the United Healthcare plans that were relevant, and continued what I had, and am paying through the nose. And I wonder whether in your plans to talk to the university, people in my situation may be re-subsidized as part of the overall fairness, because VIA really was not useful when I had to deal with them in this experimental first year. Thank you.
If I can respond to that, it is my understanding that you can come back as long as you haven't been away for 5 years. And but somebody wrote me a letter and said, well, but that might mean that you now have to go through some extra medical certification of some sort or whatever. So you're not automatically eligible for a different and new plan. I cannot answer that question, but if somebody knows about that, maybe they should speak up now.
We are getting a number of questions about different aspects of what's going to be offered this year, and we have no insight. And unlike previous years when Human Resources asked us to host meetings, which we did, and then they would take your questions, this year they have opted not to do that because of VIA. So we can't. I don't know about you, Eli, but I know that I don't believe we have any insight at all into things like catastrophic options and all that are being offered.
Jean, this is Harold. I think I could have some input on that last question.
Okay.
About the subsidy and signing up with VIA after being eligible. The problem isn't only that they refuse to offer the same, like for example, UHC AARP. It's not that they don't want to offer the same insurance, because what they call churning. In other words, if you sign up with them, and as it was mentioned, they get a commission. If they sign you up for the same insurance, they don't get that commission. They don't want to do it. They say that's against the law. because it was called churning. But the big problem really is that if you then go and sign up with VIA for a different type insurance, which might be comparable, it's not only that it might be from a different company or it might be a different premium. The bigger problem is, as somebody mentioned, when you first sign up with Medicare Part A, B, D, and everything, when you're first eligible, you get you don't, they're not allowed to charge you extra for any pre-existing conditions or anything like that. The price is what it is, and it's sort of guaranteed. If at this point somebody takes that signs up, for example, AARP, UHC, and then you want to switch, and then with the intent of switching back to AARP, UHC in a year, at which point VIA would get that commission. At that point, you wouldn't have any guaranteed rates or even a guarantee that they would give you insurance, because then you would be, as the previous person said, at that point, the insurance companies could demand that you have a whole new physical, and all of your medical history then becomes the basis of what the premium that they could charge you, whereas the insurance that you have at this point is not up for that increased premium based on previous history. So that's a really big problem. So the question is if the university were to be fair, that they really should offer these subsidies and not have you go through VIA, because going through VIA, even though you get $900 for the year, that's low in comparison to what they might increase, what the increased charge for a new insurance policy might be.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I should add that our neighbor to the south, NYU, does not give VIA the exclusivity. It separates the management of the contribution from the signing up. You can sign up with anybody you want to, and VIA will manage the contribution to go to that particular pot.
Mm-hmm. Francois, you had a question? You're muted. Francois, you're muted.
Yes, sorry. I agree with both Eli and Bob. So far, the VIA agents who were relatively helpful last year have all been reassigned. The current agents are not knowledgeable at all and unwilling to give us any kind of even basic comparison between the different plans. We have to make a decision very soon. For me, it was between different plans in the medical supplement advantage, not advantage, Medigap program. I could not get a detailed comparison of, for instance, Plan F and Plan G. Plan F, which is the only one that has no network, and like Eli, I travel, so I cannot do the network. That gets me, I was not able to get even the 2024 rates, the premium rates from the VIA agent. I had to spend hours dealing with it myself with AARP and UHC. And I have a total at this point for 2024 of almost 6,000 in the premium itself. On top of that, the AARP drug plan is 1,400 and completely insufficient. It doesn't cover most brands, actually all brands, and a lot of drugs are just not covered at all and go to us at retail prices. So one, the plans that offer no network are incredibly sky high, incredibly expensive. And two, more importantly, even we are getting no help from the current VIA agents. They are not knowledgeable and not willing to go into the basic research that the agents were doing last year.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
VIA has very little incentive to provide a quality service because, I mean, they're the only game in town. If you want to get the $1,000 or whatever, if you want to get it, you have to go through them. And so they know that they have you. That's part of the problem.
Sherry Brantruff, please unmute. You're still muted, Sherry. Sherry? All right. I don't, Roberta, asked, Reisig asked the questions about, whether people in New York State, are protected against penalty if they switch plans. Does anybody know if that's the case?
Yeah, the New York is actually one of 13 states where by New York law, they can't increase premiums when you switch for any reason at all. New York, there are 13 states in the country, and New York is one of them.
All right, that's good news.
Are there other questions? I just wonder how much, I mean, the commission data are staggering. It seems to me, and this is for a company that has stepped in to do what our HR group did for nothing before, right? And just contracting with it just seems to me that they should just take the commission and divide it amongst us, no matter when we retired, and that would solve a lot of the problem. Linda, I think you were next. Linda Green. Please.
Yeah, I'm a little, so I I was just retired a couple years ago, and last year when they switched to VIA, one of the most glaring differences, besides for how much money the university was contributing, was that the plan I was on before didn't exist under VIA, and there was nothing even close to it. And I really liked my plan, and I had it for years. And so, the university clearly has a big role as a self-insurer in selecting plans for the non-retired faculty. And I'm wondering if they have any input into the plans that VIA offers us as retired faculty, and in particular, is there any way to avoid this discontinuity, which, I had to switch from United to Aetna because there were only, I don't know, I'm not even sure there were any United plans, but whatever there was were way more expensive. So, it's very disruptive to change plans. You have to notify all your doctors and cards and this and that. And then it turned out the benefits, and this is another thing about VIA, or either they don't know or they don't tell you what your drug costs will be. My major prescription drug, which I had a $20 copay per month under United, is now $100 copay per month. And I actually argued with Aetna about it, but they said, that's it. That's the way we do it. It's a tier 4, whereas it was a tier 1 or tier 2 under United. There was no way for me to know that in advance. All they told me is which drugs were covered, but there's a big difference in what tier they're put in terms of copay, and it makes a huge difference in your out-of-pocket costs, right? So that's, I don't know if that's complaining against VIA, maybe it is, but I guess my more basic question is the university even keeping track of these plans that are being offered by VIA, evaluating them, getting feedback? Because why use them if they're, and obviously a lot of us have complaints about them. I don't know if that's a rhetorical question. Ellie, do you know if they have any input into this?
My colleague Linda, who also pronounces my name correctly. Thank you. All right. I think the university is totally hands-off when it comes to the plans that are offered through VIA. First, because they want to be hands-off,
Right.
And secondly, because it is the management here would be too high. I think that's one of the reasons why the university pushed this over to VIA, was basically the system got too complicated. there's nothing wrong with the system of an exchange, I should say that. There's a problem with the exclusive exchange. And that you have even to go through an exchange if you're perfectly happy with the arrangement. It's that the university ties a particular exchange to the contribution that is the problem. So if you wanted to stay with a plan or want to find a better plan, you should be able to do that, and the contribution is portable to whatever you choose. That's an important issue for us to stress.
Thanks. Thank you, Eli, for all the work you've put into this.
Sherry? Sherry
Okay,
Campbell?
now I can unmute. Thanks, Jane. You know, I must be unbelievably naive. Until I got the intro, the invitation to this meeting, I had no idea that I couldn't go back and elect Columbia Insurance whenever I wanted. I retired, I want to say maybe 15 years ago, but I've been working since then. So I've had insurance on my job. But when I retired, you had that mandatory retirement meeting. And I said, could I come back anytime I want? And they were like, anytime you want. How can it be that it's 15 years later now and the entire game has changed? I understand there must not be that many people like me out there, but there are two in my immediate family who retired at the same time after 25 plus years at Columbia, and were told we could definitely opt in whenever we wanted.
Well, they told you wrong, because we never had that right, because I retired a number of years ago too. And you had like a 2 or 3 year window. So whoever told you that was giving you wrong information.
So please continue to advocate for those of us who are more than 5 years out, even if it's only $300, but still better in my pocket. I'm more fiscally responsible. Anyway, thank you. Thanks,
Cool.
Jean.
Thank you.
Roberta?
What drug plan is the best to choose now in case we get really sick later? I can't figure that out. What covers the most among the options that VIA offers? Does anyone know?
I could take a crack at that. It's Harold again. So it's the one answer, and I think this also goes to what some other people were saying, is oftentimes what the VA agents will tell you when asking about comparisons between various plans, whether it's F and G and N, and all the Medicare B or the Medicare Part D, is that actually Medicare has a website where you could go to the website if you sign into the Medicare.gov or mymedicare.gov, and you could put in the medications that you're taking, and then it will give you a per year cost comparison between various insurance companies like Cigna, United Healthcare, Aetna, and all the others, based on that adds up the premiums plus the per month copay and all of those for the exact medications that you're taking. So it looks like you were going to say something.
Oh, well, I've done that. What I'm concerned about is being covered in case in the future I need some ridiculously expensive medicine.
Yeah, so that's the one caveat, which what I'm sort of alluding to what I said before, is that if when you first sign up for one of these plans, when you're Medicare eligible, then your premiums and everything is sort of locked in. They can't really, if your medical status changes or if you need different medications, they can't change the premium that they're charging you. As far as the drug costs go, the two issues that I think need to be taken into effect is one, is under Biden's initiative, some of the more expensive medications, hopefully in the future, will continue to be capped for Medicare recipients, but also that a lot of the medications that someone that said, about tier 1, tier 2, tier 4, that those are always going to be at the discretion of what the drug company charges. And most of the plans from different United Healthcare, again, Aetna and all those, they're all going to charge, for example, Eliquis, which is one of the top 10 medications prescribed that was on Biden's list to begin negotiations, is a very commonly used drug, and it's very, very expensive. Until the company that makes it, whatever company that is, until their patent runs out, that's going to continue to be expensive, and there's nothing anyone except the government can really do. And there's no predicting that in the future.
Thank you. I think Harold, we should get rid of VIA and just have Harold.
Well, I think the VIA is a really bum deal for a lot of people. But more importantly, it's a nice thing that the university is saying, well, if you're within 5 years, that you could come back. But it's not that simple, because again, like I said, the big deal is that within 5 years, a lot can change. People's medical conditions has changed. Once people like me and others who've signed up for, who looked at the university's plan and said, well, $220 a year was not worth it to go on a university plan, made other arrangements and signed up with various insurance. If I wanted to now take advantage of the $900 and possibly in the future, if that's more, then that would be what I would gain. But what I would be giving up is if something happened, if there was a change in my medical condition, then my premiums would automatically go up if I tried to, whether I change plans or which I don't. And I think that's a real big disservice and really unfair.
I think that's what Eli's been saying. Alice?
Just one quick question. From what Columbia pocket do the commissions that go to VIA come? Do they come out of the trust fund? Do they come out of, the university's budget? And if we got rid of VIA, or if they got rid of VIA, would that money then be available to distribute among beneficiaries?
Let me try to answer that. Technically, the commission is paid by the actual insurance company to VIA as kind of like an agency fee. So one could, in a purely technical sense, say it's the insurance company that pays for it. But of course, it gets passed on largely or completely to the end users, the customers, us. So in effect, we are paying it, because if the insurance company wouldn't have to pay the commission, they could give us a lower rate if they were permitted to. The laws restrict their price flexibility, but the law was written partly at the insistence and pressure and lobbying of companies such as VIA, who in fact did not want these kind of negotiations to be possible, because they would kind of be squeezed, then they would have to price compete. There is at this point no price competition.
Actually, can I just add one thing on that? There's the companies, actually, the insurance companies actually are the ones that pay the commission. But actually, there's a big difference in the various companies and how much they pay, and specifically, there's a huge difference in what the government will reimburse or what the government will allow companies to charge for commission. For example, if you're signing up for a Medigap or if you're signing up for a medical advantage, which is why there are so many commercials on these days on television about signing up for medical advantage. The commission available to agents for signing someone up to a medical advantage is much, much, much greater, sometimes 10 times as great as if they signed you up for a Medigap plan. So there's really been a big push to sign people up for medical advantage without telling you the disadvantages of that. But although the university never gets any involved with the commissions, but there is a huge difference in what these middlemen like VIA will recommend to you based on the commissions that they're in line to get from the various companies.
I'm going to go to Carol before Francoise. Carol Friedman.
Hi, thank you. I just looked up on the internet via the benefits for our region, and I got the message saying that Medigap was not available. So the only thing available for Mark was Medicare Advantage. Those were the only plans available. That's very inferior. I think even the City College, the professors at CUNY just fought that not wanting Medicare Advantage. So that's the only options we have if we want United Healthcare. Otherwise, they're like, I never even heard of the other plans. So that's the issue, I think, is that we're not getting full choice and getting inferior plans.
It's true. VIA does not give us any better prices. They claim they are not committed to. They give us a lower choice. Not all the plans, as you mentioned, that are available in the region are available in VIA. And if you move to California or to Florida or out of the country, you're even worse off.
Right, and also they said, "Oh, call an agent." Like they didn't give me any information about that. But that, the only thing is I had to call an agent, had to call me. So that's also annoying, that it's not transparent.
Francois? You're still muted.
You're muted.
Yes, thanks, Jean and Eli. I had the same question as Roberta, which plan is best or more comprehensive? No answer whatsoever from the VIA benefit agent. When I finally got through to United, the ARP for the Medigap plans, they keep pushing Plan F because they say it's more comprehensive. I've asked them for the past 4 weeks now, in what way is it more comprehensive? Can they provide a detailed comparison of for the medical of what's covered? And I wasn't able to obtain it, and I wasn't able to obtain it on the internet either. So we are pushed in a situation where we have to make a decision blindly because we don't really have a basis for a comparison between the Medigap plans. And I was told last year that the premiums would not be raised, and Plan F has just raised its premium from 14% from $318 per month, which was already sky high, to $359 per month, with no indication that they will not continue to raise this premium every year. So this is where we are.
Thank you.
Can I jump in?
Yes.
So I'm not sure whether you're aware, but there's a book called Medicare and You that comes out every year. And it's also on the internet, and that basically goes into all kinds of information that you want to know about Medicare, Medicare Advantage, Medigap, and it gives a comparison of all of the benefits between the different plans. I mean, the simple answer to your question is, as far as Plan F goes, that is one of the most comprehensive plans for Plan B. And actually, Medicare is actually doing away with that. So if you don't sign up for Plan F, that won't be available in the very near future. The major difference is, for example, what your deductible might be if you're, for example, for a hospital stay. If you, obviously nobody plans on going into the hospital, but if you're admitted to the hospital, there's a huge deductible based on that plan that you get. For Plan F, the Medigap, usually that deductible is zero because you're paying your premium and there's an upfront deductible. The only comparable plan in Medicare is Plan G, which is a little bit, the premiums are a little bit more, but there's no deductible. So depending on how much you're going to wind up, how much you anticipate your deductible is going to be, the two best plans are Plan F and Plan G. And the only difference between those two is Plan G has a deductible, Plan F doesn't.
Yes, I saw all of that. But still, the comparison was
I'm
not...
going to have to cut you because we have other people.
Sure.
So, Heidi?
Thank you very much. I was one of the few that went through VIA, and not because I liked them, but I just wanted to get the problem resolved and not have to think about it. So since I have no chronic disease, take no medication, I was put into Medicare Elite Plan 3, Aetna. I have no idea what that is. So far, I haven't used it. So does maybe Harold know what is Medicare Elite Plan?
No, it's just the name of a plan. I mean, usually with an elite, I mean, each of these companies gives you different gives you different hierarchies of what their plan is. How much, the more the premium goes up, the more benefits you get. And most of the time, those benefits are, as the premium goes up, most of the time the benefits are what you're going to wind up paying in copays and deductible. So usually with an elite plan or a premium plan or something like that, it basically means they're charging you more, but what you're getting is a lower deductible if you need to use the services like inpatient or outpatient, those types of things.
Okay, thank you.
David? You're muted, David. David, you're muted.
I thought I was unmuted.
You're muted again.
You're muted.
I'm sorry, I'm running out of battery, and I just wanted to add one or two quick things that may have already been discussed. Number one, New York City has a department for the aging. It's a wonderful resource for people. I can give you the name of Alex Wu, W-U, who helped me out tremendously last year. And the Medicare.gov website is absolutely wonderful, especially for drug plans. They run the cost based on whatever medications you all put into the questionnaire. But if a drug is in the insurance company's portfolio, you'll be covered for it. Who knows what the cost would be? But they're just running the costs of the drugs that we put in to their to their questionnaire, and then you can compare premiums with drug costs. You can compare level 1, level 2, or tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 medications. That's all on Medicare.gov. And thank you for your wonderful presentation. Appreciated it terrifically. Thank you.
Well, Eli, is there something that you would like to add? Eli and Ellie.
Yeah. Well, thank you. We basically have conducted this conversation, and the issues are on two levels. The one level is, given a system, how do we manage it best, which plan and what company, etc. And the other level is kind of, how do we get Columbia to get us a better deal and a better system? It would be helpful for me, as I talk to some people, to have as much feedback from you as I've had in the past, even more so, because what you write to me, I kind of take these paragraphs out and I anonymize them, but I pass them on and say, these are some problems that we have to deal with. And they have an impact. So I would be grateful to hear from you, with the idea that some of that information that you're writing to me would be anonymized, passed on, as these are problems that our retirees are encountering. We got to do something about it. And here's one way that we can deal with it more effectively. So feedback would be really helpful. And perhaps lastly, from my end, I think that while we don't want to make noise prematurely, we should be prepared, at least in principle, to put some pressure on the university. If they understand that this is a possibility, they will act differently even without us having to do anything. But merely our willingness, this group here and others of our colleagues, to be heard, to stand up and be heard, really makes a big difference here. We are a potential PR problem for the university. We don't have much direct power, but there are kind of a lot of famous, respected academics here. And the notion of the university nickel and diming them just does not look good. And the overall dollar amounts are small, and there is a big pool of money available to take care of it. So there's absolutely no reason why we cannot get a better deal.
Norma?
I just wanted to say something about the PR problem, which you began to talk about a little more. I think they may vastly underestimate what a big PR problem we are. I came here 50 years ago in my first year of assistant professorship, never dreaming I'd stay in New York. And I turned down a lot of other places. I really loved Columbia right until last September when I started to retire. And I became furious. And I'm not an angry person generally, actually. And as I say, I'd loved Columbia for 50 years. And if Jacqueline von Gorkum hadn't told me about Ellie's report, I would have thought either I was losing my mind, which was a possibility. It seems so strange to me that Columbia would act that way, or that Columbia was just acting in a despicable fashion after 50 years. So I not usually an angry person, but I talked to a lot of people. I talked to people at the National Academy of Sciences. I talked to people, I've been on lots and lots of journals. Not sure I deserve all of it, but anyway, that's who I am. I still talk to all those people. I retired because I wasn't sure I could count on my state of mind staying good, but I wanted to do more work. And I talked to all these people, and I've been complaining for a year loudly. I've told people a lot richer than me, don't bother. Well, I'm calming down these days, but don't bother donating. They're not treating their retirees well. Told people not to send their children. This is not like me. But it just seemed like an incredible slap in the face to someone who was all I was trying to do was not leave the university struggling to replace me if I had a stroke, so that I thought I had enough money to retire on. All I wanted to do was continue working and not leave. And what did I get for my pains? I got months worried about my medical insurance, not even able to figure out what to do. So anyway, thank you for bringing this up. And I think you, if anything, have been underestimating the PR problem that a bunch of retirees are going to present for this university.
I think in some ways this is a very different problem than many of the others that we've faced, where we couldn't get through a door or we couldn't get into the library. Those were bureaucratic problems with the absolutely dysfunctional information system that we have for getting us through doors and in the library. This is a very different level of problem. This is one where it's thought out and where they've been clearly confronted and have not come up with an adequate solution. I agree with Sherry Brantroff. Why those of us who opted out of their ridiculously overpriced system 10 years ago or 15 years ago shouldn't get the same subsidy? There just seems to be, I'm not even sure that that's legal, because I think there are laws that cover what you can. Do you know, Eli? I don't know that you can differentiate benefits among people who are in pension classes. So I don't know where that a two-tier system would actually pass muster, but I'm not a lawyer. And that would be interesting to look at as a question. I think unless there are other new questions, I think we should adjourn this meeting, which is now if it's a question about continuing benefits, I would just as soon put that off, and you can just send a separate email on that. Well, thank you for your continuing work. We could have a sit-in, and then they would have to figure out how, once we sat down, how they would get us all up and out. But that would be an interesting. We'd have to find a place to sit in that was close enough.
It would make great television coverage. Yeah.
But we have to find the right place, because Low Library does not have convenient bathrooms, so we wouldn't want to necessarily sit in.
Actually, I'd like to make a quick comment.
Okay.
You know, a while back, I remember getting a survey about medical insurance and all kinds of things. And I went and said to my husband, we're in trouble, because most faculty are younger and they don't think of retirement medical insurance. And sure enough, then they reduced the medical insurance for retirees. So, you know, I was really infuriated, and I felt I felt that this was deliberate. It was sort of, it was planned. They had a consultant and they planned it. It was.
They abolished it.
Yeah. And, I feel like I've supported the university over 35 years of service, being a full, a professor and raising money for the university throughout the time, raising money for students and everything. And this is how I'm treated. It's very shabby. And it is bad PR because when I speak to other people from NYU, they're hardly paying anything. And they could go to, when they go to international conferences, they're still covered as a retiree. I found out we weren't even covered when I went to international conferences. I was shocked that our healthcare was not covered. So I think we can make a very big PR issue of it. And it is, it's really shabby. And I want to thank Eli very much for this because I didn't know about the report and, it gave us so much more information and strength, actually. So thank you.
Thank you. Much appreciated. And I got a lot of positive feedback. I would say that as much as I mentioned earlier, as much as we the retirees have learned now, the administration has also kind of made progress in understanding itself what that system is. So some of what they've done is kind of penny pinching, and some of it was just unthinking. And so I would not just attribute any kind of particular nefarious, manipulative type motives to this. We were just kind of relatively quiet constituency that would not complain too much, and so that we also, let's face it, expendable, and so they could just get away with it.
Well, I think they use the trust fund money to meet the demands of the unionized workers, and which doesn't include, unlike the CUNY faculty, which is covered by unions, and Columbia is not, and that's the difference. All right, thank you very much. I don't know, what the next step. Gerald Rosner does want to meet with EPIC as a group, and we will set up a Zoom meeting, and I think that would be a good time to raise a number of these questions. I see Frank Wolf has joined us. Frank, do you have anything you'd?
Not really. Apologies for being late. No, I just don't think that we're likely to move the big ship of Columbia except in fairly trivial ways. And obviously we are greatly indebted to Eli. If people have problems of a mechanical kind going through the process this year, I'm happy to try to be helpful. I know how it works pretty well, and I have nothing further to say.
So we will contact Rosner and set up a time. And
Rosberg.
Sorry, Rosberg. So far I've mispronounced our speaker's name and gotten our senior vice president wrong, so that's pretty good.
Frank deserves has carried this torch for many years. He deserves much appreciation.
Yes.
Thanks, Eli.
All right. To be continued. And we do hope to see some of you at our next talk on the 31st. Join the Drama Society or the soon-to-be music initiative, and we'll keep on working. Take care, everyone.